The Holy Gospel this morning comes from St. John in the 8th chapter. Then Jesus said to the Jewish people who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And they answered him, "Well, we are descendants of Abraham and have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean by saying you will be made free?" And Jesus answered them, "Well, very truly I tell you, everyone who commits a sin is a slave to sin, and the slave does not have a permanent place in the household, but the Son has a place there forever. So if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed." The Gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. So these texts that we read now, the three that Lauren read for us and the one from the Gospel of John, these are central to our Reformation and our Lutheran heritage and identity. And the last one, the one from the Gospel of John, was one of Luther's all-time favorites. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And there is a certain sense where if you have been grasped by the truth and the truth has freed you, that freedom, therefore, has given you immense amount of power and ability to be able to live in this world. So it is an important verse to remember. And it's right that the truth, that is the truth that God loves you, God forgives you, our lives are blessed by God's creative power, and should that creation go astray, by God's redemptive power for a continual ongoing creation, that truth is there, regardless of whether you want to believe it or not, regardless of whether it's even convenient for you to believe it or not. I mean, it doesn't really matter because the truth is there. I suppose it's possible you could say, "Please, God, don't love me," but maybe somebody has. I don't know, but it seems like a rather strange prayer. But the truth is there, and if the truth has grasped you, and in your apprehension of that, you have seen God's love and grace and mercy in your life, you are free, and you are free indeed, to be able to bring love and hope and peace into the world. But as the context of this very story takes place, Jesus is talking to some of his Jewish brothers and sisters. Remember, Jesus himself is a Jew. And we have to be very careful that we don't use our freedom to abuse or denigrate or terrorize or in any other way, shape, or form deconstruct the life of another person who may not have apprehended the truth as we have. There is no place in this world for Christian hatred, Christian abuse, or Christian killing of those who are of other faiths. And what happened yesterday in Pittsburgh is a prime example of what we can never allow ourselves to do if the truth has apprehended us. But rather, we have to understand that we have been created for love and for hope and for peace, not for murder, not for terrorism, not for hatred. And Martin Luther himself was denigrated. It stands as a shame to him that he was not able to overcome his own anti-Semitism. And that the churches that he walked in regularly abused the Jewish people who lived there in his towns. We must learn from his shame and find ways to continue to support the ancestors of our faith. These Jewish brothers and sisters that were killed in Pittsburgh yesterday are the people who are the ancestors of Abraham, Moses, Jacob. Do you really want a future where there's no Moses or no Abraham? If not, then we must do everything in our power to support our Jewish brothers and sisters. I'll give you a classic example of something that happens. There's about 4.5 million Jewish people in this country. 4.5 million. Do you know how many people are in the ELCA? Our little denomination of Christians? About 4 million. There's about one Jew for every one of us. we are so captivated by this so-called whatever that we lose track of the fact that there's barely any of them here. We must, in our own little way, and because our denomination stands condemned, we are, after all, the Christian church that was part of the persecution in the Nazi Empire, our German heritage, so to speak. We must do everything in our power to understand that when the truth has apprehended us, it has set us free not to kill and terrorize, but to nurture, to love, to steward, to take care of, to be responsible for all our brothers and sisters. All our brothers and sisters in faith. So, what does it look like then if the truth has set you free? Well, if the truth has set you free, then you're going to be open to the world. You're going to be able to see then that God has given us a gift to be able to celebrate life in all its beauty and variety. This autumnal season that's kind of rolling around in these last few days with relatively low wind, nice weather, and beautiful color, how great it has been. To be open to what God, to open our eyes, to open our ears to just the wonder and majesty of the world that God has made. This is what it means to be true and to live in that truth that has set us free. To be able to open our circles of life, to be able to see that our families and friends are constantly adding new relationships and new ways that we can live and grow together. And it might not always be comfortable for us. It might not always be a way that we understood. It might not go in the way that we had planned or hoped. After all, culture eats our plans and strategies for breakfast. But it is to be open to God's truth and to wander in that freedom. So I'll tell you a story about how I best understand if the truth has captured you and you have lived in that freedom. So it's getting on close to 15 years ago now. I found myself at an event at Princeton Theological Seminary in Princeton, New Jersey. And it's the first time I'd ever been to Princeton. And it's a wonderful little city, town. I can see why people go to school there and things like that. It's a very nice place. And so we had a little dinner, and the dinner got over relatively early, and we were set there. It was a beautiful spring day. It was in April. And a couple of friends of mine had actually gone to school there at Princeton, and they were willing to take us all around on a little walking tour that evening. And another friend and I, he's a Lutheran pastor out in San Clemente, California, he and I took him up on the offer. So the four of us kind of made this walking tour through Princeton Seminary, Princeton University, and around that area. And so the first place we went to was the house of Albert Einstein. Now, you might not know Albert Einstein, but he was kind of famous back in his day for thinking about things that nobody else could or would think about. And he had a house. And actually, if you know Albert Einstein, that's kind of shocking. But there it is. And it was night, and there was one light on up in the second floor of Albert Einstein's house. Now, of course, the two guys from Princeton, they were like, here's Albert Einstein's house. And the two Lutherans are like, we need a selfie on the front porch. And they're like, no, that's not how it works. There's people living in that house now. And we're like, yeah, but the light's on upstairs. We just kind of sneak over this fence and then onto the porch. A little selfie. Good. So the Princeton people, they started walking away, and of course the two Lutherans hobbled over the thing, got a selfie on Einstein's porch, and I'm famous. So we wander around, and we go up. They have this observatory thing that they do, that they look out over Princeton University and over the town of Princeton, looks towards New York, and just kind of wonderful. And they just got this whole tour. So we finally worked ourselves back to the actual seminary, and they have a chapel in the seminary, go figure. And you got to remember, when you go to a place like Princeton, which I discovered, out here in the Midwest and out in the West, our idea of history, usually is whatever the History Channel gave us. And, you go to Princeton and you'll see something like this arch dedicated from the class of, 1820. And I come from a state that didn't even get organized until, 1900. So, by that time, Princeton was another 80 years old. So, there's some history back there. It's like a museum. It's a university. So we're at the chapel in the seminary. And they're Presbyterian. Princeton is a Presbyterian school, and they're very big on preaching. And so if you walk into the Princeton chapel, like right where our baptismal font is a pulpit that kind of walks up. It's about 15, 20 feet in the air. And the preacher then would be preaching, from that. And if you think I'm looking down on you now, imagine if I'm sitting up there, and stuff like that. So I'm looking at this pulpit, and I'm reminding myself, thankfully, why I'm still a Lutheran. And then I walk outside. And as I go outside, it's about 9 o'clock at night now, and there's a group of students from the seminary, and there's a little park area, and they've kind of gathered in a circle. And they've got, and I kid you not, they've got a screen and they've got an overhead projector. Now, it is quite fair that I had probably not seen an overhead projector since I was in the 4th grade. So I was really kind of impressed that kind of technology still existed at the time. And so they were there, and there was some lyrics on the overhead projector that was on the screen. There were some people with some guitars, and somebody had a flute, and there was a little drum of some kind, and they were singing the song, "Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to hear you. I want to see you, be you," whatever. So they're singing that song, and I'm standing there on the porch, and my friends finally joined me. And so the four of us. Now, you got to remember that this particular quartet that's now been wandering around Princeton for the last couple hours, we're a little strange. We're all academics. And in fact, two of the guys that are in that group, the Lutheran pastor and one of the Presbyterian pastors, had written books on worship and whatnot. And so we're all kind of standing there watching this group of would-be Presbyterian leaders, but there's about 25 of them in a circle singing "Open the Eyes of My Heart," and I'm trying to think to myself, gosh, is this, what's going on here? So I walk down a little farther, get closer to the group, walk down off the porch of the chapel, and I walk into the circle. I'm standing about a couple feet away from the circle, and now I'm looking at the words, and I can kind of catch on where they are in the song. And as I'm doing that, my three friends, they're realizing that they're going to try to do it too, so they're kind of on my shoulder here. And so they're all just standing there singing. They're in a circle, they're holding their hands, "Open the eyes of my heart, Lord." And all of a sudden, there's a woman off to my left, and all of a sudden, she drops her hand, she reaches back, grabs mine, and keeps singing. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I do not mind if younger women grab my hand. But at that particular moment, I did not know what to do. So I did the only other thing I thought I could possibly do is I grabbed the hand of my friend standing next to me. Right? So I got her hand, I got his hand. And he does the same thing. Then when my last friend, Eric, at the end, he reaches and continues the circle. So now you got this kind of circle with this little kind of tumor of theologians on it. And that's the title of my next book, actually, Tumor of Theologians. So there we are, singing now, "Open the Eyes of My Heart, Lord," and the circle kind of forms with the four of us in it, and we join them for a few more songs. And then when they begin their next part of their worship service, we kind of beg out and go. That's what it means to know the truth, and the truth will set you free. What that young woman did, where she just expanded the circle without even knowing anything about me or whatever was going on, she just dropped the hand of the person and just reached out and grabbed my hand. That's what it means to know the truth, and the truth will set you free. To be able to open your arms, open your life up to what God has given you. To be able to trust that God will take care of you and work, no matter how big or how weird the shape the circle gets, that God is part of what you're about. So we live, all right, in that kind of reality. That when we are apprehended by the truth, it sets us free. And may we always remember that the freedom that we have been given in Jesus Christ is a freedom to open our arms, open our eyes, open our lives, rather than to terrorize and destroy. To be part of God's ongoing creation. Because after all, what else is the point of being free? Amen.